So it says you are live on YouTube.
Thank you, Christy. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Thanks, Christy. So welcome, everybody. This is our special meeting, special committee of the whole meeting. It is dated the June the 8th. And I'm going to open this meeting with a motion from moved by Karen Jennings and seconded by Jeff Carroll that the special meeting of council of the whole agenda dated June the 8th, 2021 be approved as circulated. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I also remind all of council that if you have any disclosure of interest, you can declare it now or anytime during the meeting. And as I said, so welcome to the public. This is being live streamed, and welcome to several of our staff members that are with us tonight. I do see already Miles and Andrew and Joanna. I'm not sure if we're missing anybody else yet, Joanna there, but welcome to all of you and council. So the first thing on the agenda is that we have no delegations, and we have one report of the municipal officers, and that's going to be yours, Joanna. But I just want to say that tonight, although I see only two others tonight, I assume that we will be having our treasurer, Andrew Hodge, our public works manager, Stephen Rothwell, our fire chief, water operator, Miles Greer, and our chief building official, Jim Hunter, and it says supporting staff for the building report. So are all of those people going to be with us tonight, Joanna?
So unfortunately, Jim had another commitment tonight and he couldn't make it. And we basically, well, I'll get into in a minute, but the report is from sort of staff as a whole, but it's being presented by the managers, the treasurer, public works manager, fire chief, and myself. So
yeah, okay. So I know you've got a PowerPoint here that you'll be showing us. And so I'm going to hand this part of the meeting over to you, Joanna. Do we have do we share, can you share that PowerPoint?
Yeah, I'm putting that up right now.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, can everybody see the screen I'm looking at?
Yep, I see it.
Excellent. Okay, so the special meeting is obviously been called for the discussion of, the discussion of possibilities for moving forward with either renovations or a rebuild of the municipal complex. So this has been going on for a considerable amount of time, and obviously it's a divisive subject. So I just want to, I don't think I have to tell you, to tell all of you or any of staff, but we should try to, just maintain a respectful, discourse here. And I believe we will have questions from the public, I'm sure. So I just want to be sure at the outset that we're all, listening and being respectful of everybody, because it can get, pretty contentious, I think. But I'm just going to start off by talking about, as I said before, this is something that had been talked about previously. And as early as the last meeting that was held about this was June 23rd. And at that time, there was direction provided by yourselves for a number of different items. So I'm just going to go through those really quickly. The first one was that to direct staff proceed with option 1 for the fire, public works, and defer the administrative buildings regarding building report 1. So essentially the decision here that was made last year was to redevelop the buildings on our current location. There was also direction to authorize staff to apply for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Green Municipal Fund through the Design Build program. That was done. It started, I believe, in July, and the final email was sent between our clerk administrator and the FCM in December. The next piece of direction was to proceed with option 1 regarding the roof replacement. That is ongoing. Our public works manager has been working directly with the engineers to get a final product. We were hoping to have that by this meeting, and unfortunately we do not, despite making several calls. So once we get that, the next direction to staff was to move forward with a joint engineering construction tender for a peak roof replacement. So as I said, once we get those engineering drawings, we will be putting out an RFP for that as directed. Then there was a direction to demolish the storage sheds and remove the smoke training tower at the back of the property and phase in a new storage building to accommodate equipment in the next budget cycle. One of the sheds has been taken down, as has the smoke training tower. We have not gone ahead and budgeted anything because we're basically on a holding pattern, waiting to see, what decisions will come out of this, so we sort of know how to proceed. The next one was authorize staff to proceed with demolishing the storage sheds. And so we have had one removed and one re-tendered for demolition as required. And the last one was that staff planned public consultation once the results of the build design feasibility study are received. This is the start of the process. So I'll get back to that in a minute, but that's sort of where we're at with the direction provided by council back in June of 2020. Then on March 2nd of this year, council directed staff to draft a report regarding options for municipal building renovations or replacement. The report shall include discussions on the administration building, and that this report shall be presented at a special committee of the meeting hall as soon as feasibly possible. So that's what this report is today. So I guess some background to this. This council and previous councils have been approached various times throughout the history by various senior staff to discuss the state of the municipally owned buildings, administration, fire hall, public works, and actually the post office and the hall as well. And last year, starting in 2019 and 2020, we had a visual inspection completed. So we had a building assessment report done by McIntosh Perry, and they sort of went through, and this will be part of this slideshow. They went through the different concerns they had, where things were going okay, and where we needed to improve with maintenance or any issues that have come up. Because there has been little maintenance to any of the buildings over the time. We have addressed the roof on several occasions, but there are other areas that need to be explored and looked at. And we have some unaddressed health and safety concerns that we'll go through that I think more than anything else are the things that we need to be really addressing. So when I started this report, I'd only been here a very short period of time as the acting clerk administrator. So I felt it would make sense to sort of involve staff members who had been here for a longer period of time than myself to be able to tell me, what the concerns were in the building, the need, both the needs and the wants moving forward, and that they could provide me some of the history of what's happened over the course of time. So I had sort of some informal meetings with public works staff, administration staff, managers, to sort of get their input. So this report is sort of based off the input that we received from every member of staff. And again, I went that route because I had very limited understanding, having been here such a short period of time. So at this stage in the game, this report received is for information only, and it is acting as part of the start of the public consultation process, so that people sort of are aware at the stage we're at, where we're going. in conjunction with this, we have released a request for proposal to have a design build study done. Those proposals should be in June 10th, and then we'll make a decision on the group that we want to go with. The intent of having this RFP done is to fulfill the requirements of the FCM grant. So we put some money forward to do a study. We should have the results from that study in about November of this year is the guidelines we've been provided. And the hope is we'll get like guidance from professionals in various areas as to the state of the building, energy efficiency issues, health and safety issues, accessibility, financial impacts, a space needs assessment. And they'll make a determination of sort of where we should go from here. And that enables us further to be able to get more money through grants through FCM. So I'll just start this with the administration building, and then once I'm through the administration building, we'll pass it off to the other managers so you don't get sick and tired of listening to me. So this is just the current status of the administration building. So I'm just going to go through really briefly the major issues. There are other issues and there are other positive things as well in both ways, but we're just going to go through this really quickly. As you know, the report was quite long-winded, so we're going to try to make this as painless as possible. But just to start with some issues that need to be looked at in the administration building. We have a furnace currently. It operates well. There's not really any mechanical issues with it as far as we're aware, but it's located within our safe. And so, you know, our safe holds very critical information, historical information, financial information, you know, important stuff for the municipality. And the safe is meant to be fireproof. But the ductwork of the furnace goes right through the safe. So if there were ever to be a fire, it's one potential possibility is that it would start with the furnace, and so those documents would be destroyed. Alternatively, if a fire were to start somewhere else in the building, it could go through the ductwork and into the safe. So just some concern for you know, heritage records or financial records, any records that get held in the safe. So something that was looked at in the building conditions assessment report is the windows. They've reached their end of serviceable life. So they, first of all, they sort of reached their end of life. There's the sealant is gone around the edges of them. And I guess the other thing about them is that they don't open. So while they're not required under the building code to open, it'd be nice for staff to be able to have like a little bit more ventilation in the building. You know, you could open the windows in spring rather than turn on the air conditioner, or, you know, different stuff like that, sort of cost savings that way. Also, it's just, you know, in a time like with COVID-19, or as we'll get to, the potential for mold in the building, it would be good to have that feature available, windows that that could open. And we do have an HVAC system. So again, you know, maybe not entirely necessary, but something that would be certainly a nice thing to have. I think windows are in most homes, a lot of offices, something to consider. And so the other thing is being right adjacent, or actually attached to the fire hall. There are some concerns if the trucks run for any length of time, whether there's you know, CO concerns. So having the possibility to open windows is another thing that we'd like to have fixed. But water is a major one. We sent the water out for testing, for basic testing, February 23rd. And the basic testing done by the health unit is for coliform and E. coli. And it came back with a really positive test result, zeros all around. So potable in the sense of bacteriological concerns. It's perfect. You can see a picture here on the screen of what the water looks like. Not, not particularly appetizing to drink. And so what I'm sort of suggesting is that we run the water through a stronger battery of tests. You can get tests for salt, heavy metals, chemicals, various things like that. That, as far as I've been able to tell, has not occurred. So I would suggest that you know, the water is a concern, and that we should have some further testing to see whether or not it is potable. Currently, we have signs over the municipal office saying, "Do not drink the water. It's not potable." So we're bringing in bottled water for, you know, to be able to make our tea or just drink water, do that sort of thing. The other item is quantity. And so we found when the public works crew or fire department wash their trucks, we end up losing the ability to have water in the administration building for, you know, an hour or two after, or we get really gritty, worse looking water. So that's a fairly major health and safety concern that we'd like to have looked at. The other one is the leaking roof, and I think we're all aware of it. And like I said before, there's engineering out to examine that and to have the roof replaced. So we're well on our way there. The concern with the roof is that it has been leaking for a considerable period of time. So the insulation is soaked with water. The vapor barrier is, you can see a picture of it there. You know, it doesn't look great. I guess at some point, I wasn't here for it, but, you know, you could actually poke the vapor barrier and water would come through. We've had, you know, buckets in the offices whenever there's a significant rainfall. So this leads to the thoughts that there's probably, you know, potential for mold. If there's not, I also understand the ceiling tiles, as shown in this picture, have already been replaced once. So they likely will have to be replaced again. And then in the building condition assessment report, it also noted inappropriate eavesdropping. So just, yeah, I guess a lot of this is on its way to being repaired in terms of the roof, but all the damage done to the interior of the building by the leaking is something that needs to be considered. So mold, and this was sort of a picture of mold that was in the Fire Association Hall. I will be very clear, it has been repaired. So that issue was done, but I just want to, you know, sort of, you know, give you an idea that I don't think we're too far off base in the suspicion that there may be mold. There has certainly been in the Fire Association Hall building. And again, this sort of ties into the fact that, you know, we would like some ventilation with the windows. Right now we have an air purifier running all of the time. So that's a health and safety concern. In terms of, I don't have a picture here of the council chambers. I think you're all familiar with it, but it is undersized. So I think the thought is to, if we were to do an addition or a new build, to increase the size of the council chamber. We're also maxed out in space for existing staff, where we all have offices and there are none to spare. So that should be something considered if we're going to renovate or build new, is to either readjust the walls or add some space for additional staff. If we want this to last, say, another 50 years, you know, we may have a few more staff at that point. So something to consider. And filing space is another thing. Right now, some of the filing is sort of in the hall, but it would be, you know, nice to have a filing room, maybe accompanied with a photocopier someplace, so we're not always walking by the administrative assistant coming in and out of her space. It's been particularly evident during COVID. She has to wear her mask all the time because there's people in and out of the office, you know, trying to use that space for filing and for photocopying and that type of thing. So having a separate space for that, you know, would be something to consider. And I guess the last thing is you know, a conference room. We could use the council chambers, but you know, if you wanted to meet for privacy, tax sales, or the like, it might be good to have or developers for that matter, to have a more private space. So these are just some of the suggestions. So I'll read this list, future requirements, needs and wants. This sort of came out of a discussion with staff. And I've addressed some of them already, but council chambers could be extended, addition of a boardroom, an office space for the Reeve or members of council to meet with the public if they so desired. That could be combined with a boardroom. An outdoor amenity space for staff to have breaks or lunch. I know that we have one at the front along the road, and that's great, but it's a little bit loud, you know, beside the traffic. So something maybe in the back, just something for consideration. As I mentioned before, a file room, maybe some rolling storage shelves, because we do have a lot of files that are in boxes in the safe that we could maybe make more accessible. And a server room. Right now, our server room is in sort of a closeted space. Half of it's there and half of it is in our kitchen. And so I spoke with the IT department, and they certainly noted that it needs better ventilation and more space to be able to sort of work around that. Right now we're making it work, but if we were going to do a renovation or build new, it would be better to have a server room. With reference to the safe, a secure area for money and records, the printer, photocopy mail machine room, and I've put down 3 to 5 offices for additional staff to be added over the next, sort of, 30 to 50 years, is sort of what we've all ballparked as staff. Of course, with the RFP, there will be a space needs assessment, and they can probably better come up with the appropriate numbers and spacing, but those are just the needs and wants that we have on that list. And from here, I will turn it over to our Public Works Manager.
Thanks, Joe. Public Works Manager. I'll be going over the public works side of things. I briefly talk with staff about everything with it. This is a picture of the front. These doors have been severely under maintained. Recently, we've kind of put together a plan on bi-yearly or twice yearly. We'll be doing some well overdue maintenance on them, just kind of make sure everything's greased, clean out. As winter operation vehicles are used in or stored in here, salt is a huge factor that gets built up in every slot in these doors. If you take your finger, there's probably about an inch of salt and grit that's built up, and you can imagine what that's doing to the metal components of it. And as this was built a long time ago, it's as we had an incident with one of the bay doors there late last year, it was very difficult for the contractor to get parts for these doors. They're in not being created too often, and everybody's going to more modern style doors. We can go on to the next slide there. The one note with that is we have huge loss coming through these bay doors. This is the storage room inside. As you can see, not going to keep harping, but it's just a storage lack of space. The guys are kind of running out of space to put things. Trip hazards are being created as there's no shelves to put anything on. And we're just kind of using space that we can and stacking up tools where we can. And it's getting pretty dangerous. Next. So the next one here is just from the upstairs. It's kind of a mezzanine up top from the truck bays. The picture shows we have 4 staff members. They each kind of have a space along a table. As you can see on the right-hand picture, that's our lead hand. That's his desk / eating area / everything else. All of his files that he is to keep in store is all open to all staff members. Everything, note-taking, everything is visible in the front right there. And as will be noted later on in the report of the water, as you can see, there's a pile of water that staff is using. Water is obviously essential, but we'd like to try and help the environment, try and reduce our amount of bottled water intake. Next slide. Next. Moving on to our next building is the one that's in the best condition at this point. It's used for our winter material. So we got our salt on the left-hand side in the picture, and our winter grit that takes up a majority of the volume here. This was a picture that was taken in about April, so it shows you kind of the volume that's left in there, so we can't store much in there. Salt's left over, so if we were to store any vehicles in there, it's kind of defeats the purpose of trying to keep it out of salt and the elements. Come September, that building is filled right to the front with winter grit. That's about the max of salt we store at one time in that building. And as you can see, throughout the winter on the right-hand picture, that's where the rubber tire is usually stored. Now that will be the new backhoe that we are purchasing. It'll be there for loading trucks. Next. So this is now the stored building for Public Works and Fire. As you can see, it's a organization nightmare. If the guys are in there at night trying to, go for road closure or something like that, where do you even start trying to find signage? I was out looking for a stop sign last night, trying to replace one on Acton. It was quite time consuming trying to find a stop sign which should be a pretty easy job. It's climbing up, trying to reach it on the top. So again, becomes a safety issue if we had everything organized and had that extra space to actually have a well laid out and system was thought of. It'll be easy for the guys. And then again, it is meant for the fire department to have their storage in here. And as you can see, Public Works is making quite a bit of havoc in there. Next slide. So I try not to make it too lengthy in wording and that. I know myself, I like pictures better than words, but as you can see, just kind of lack of space is Public Works' biggest concern. The need for road maintenance is increasing. The demand for staff to have a high performance and have everything done right is increasing. So when we have equipment down, lack of space and the winter elements, sun on all of our equipment all the time. It may not be a huge factor to some, but over the course of time on hoses and that sun radiating down on those lines, it's going to wear them down. And if we can do anything to keep them out, that's our best thing we can do. And the room for trucks, it was concerning my first day here when I came in, and there was trucks everywhere, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is how do you guys even move in here? Like, couldn't walk behind one of the trucks as you see in one of the pictures. You had to climb over the front of a plow to get into a truck. And it was kind of mind blowing how tight they had to do everything. And we'll go to the next picture. The water, as Joel already mentioned, we won't go over that again, but it's the same thing for the Public Works guys. In this picture here, this actually doesn't really do it justice as to how tight things are. So on the left-hand side, there's the grader and the plow. When you get into the far side of the plow, or on the grader, the plow has to go in and around the steps to the mezzanine for the guys to get up. It's been hit many times. It's just a very, very non-practical situation. As you see, everything has to be brought in on kind of a slant to get everybody in. And again, when you're focusing on so many different things, that's when accidents happen. And like we saw last fall, it's looking at 5 things, all it takes is to miss one of those, and it could be pretty catastrophic. On the right-hand side, there's about a foot or less between the back of the plow and where the doors are opening. Again, brakes and everything are great. You never know if we can do whatever we can to create a bigger buffer there, and got to try and put our guys in a safe position. That's as managers, that's our responsibility. Next slide. The next here is about the kind of equipment storage. As stated, we won't go over too much in depth again, but we just purchased a brand new backhoe, which is going to be stored outside all the time, essentially, in the elements. Rubber tire shovel, it's year round. Right now, as we saw in the previous picture, the 21 plow, it's stored outside. And then all of our trucks, the inside in the summer, we got both half tons with the equipment that they're using on the daily basis, 3-ton, and then our water truck is stored inside as well. In the storage building that we have currently, we have the water tank, chipper, recycling bins for kind of this extra supply. We have the air compressor and then storage. It is noted that these buildings are to come down, but for Public Works, it is essential to try and keep as much as we can covered. So if this building comes down, we're needing to find an extra space for a lot of equipment. And then we already discussed the doors, so we'll move on to past that. So the water infiltrating through the blocks, it's something that a lot of these older buildings see, and that's kind of when maintenance has to be done. On all three walls that you can see in one of the earlier pictures, it's happening to all of them. It needs some maintenance if it's, the desire is to stay in the building, some extra insulation and refacing, and there'll be a lot of work we need with that. The front of the building, we just kind of clean that up a bit if we're staying or new, whatever may be the case, but kind of freshen that up and bring it to the 21st century here would be needed. And epoxy floor coating, that was something that was mentioned in the Mac Perry report that was completed, I believe, last year. As you can see, the water sitting in there, that's kind of the inefficient oil grit separation that Public Works had. It is not functioning properly. It's very environmentally non-friendly. And once this separation occurs, it then proceeds to an outlet, which is on the exterior of the building and drains onto the surface of the Public Works yard. Lack of insulation is the next thing. And then the septic system, it's in the rear of the building. It's small, and it's, again, same as the municipal building or the admin building. Will be in need of replacement very shortly. Next slide. So as Joe asked, kind of for some future requirements, again, these are things that any world would be great. Everybody's going to ask for more than what they will get. But essentially, in order to prepare ourselves for the next 50 years, so we're not discussing any additions for the next people coming into these positions, 4 large truck bay doors. If you have double depth, it helps with everything, increased space. And 2 small bay doors, that'd be kind of, one would be to store the half tons back to back. You can do that. And then as you can see, the lack of storage we have, one building would be for signage, and the little hand tools and everything else in the other storage building would be in there. And it just gains more access for our staff. A wash bay would be probably on my list myself, would be priority number 1, no matter what goes on. I think we got to really do something about our poor management of all these chemicals and the salt and everything that we're draining off our vehicles. Right now, it's just going right onto the surface. We're really being pretty careless with our operation of it right now, and it could set us up down the line for liability issues. So something like this that fire department and Public Works, all township could use. This would be a great asset for, I know the chief, it would be something that he'd be very interested in, and for Public Works, it'd be amazing to have something like that. The depth, that's just another thing. Automatic bay doors, yes, that's something that seems like kind of almost a lazy option, but everything's going that way. Right now, the way our automatic bay or our doors are, they're all operated by hand, which is fine. It's great for the guys, but they're actually not even performing in a safe manner right now. When you are bringing the doors down, they're supposed to slowly let themselves down and be in a controlled atmosphere. Right now, they go from the top to the bottom in one move, and it's a huge health and safety issue if somebody was to ever be near that and get pulled down with it. The next thing with the installation, it's huge. Our furnace, it's an oil furnace right now. It's dated, and come October, anytime a bit of cool air in there, we're starting that thing up, and it does not shut off for 1 second until the end of April usually. So that's why the final note there, propane furnace would be great, but if we're not going to increase any insulation, there's no point in wasting any money on a furnace there. That's it.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to give you a brief overhaul of the fire hall. So as you're aware, our fire hall at the present time is 5-bay fire hall. It has 2 large doors with 3 smaller doors. So in saying that, we can only position certain units in certain positions of the fire hall, which does become a little bit of a headache when you get a different rig and you're trying to change your hall over a little bit. Next slide, please, Joanna. So as you say, our major issues, and council is well aware of it, and I'm not going to drag it out. We do have an electrical panel in our first bay, which is inches from our ladder on our first unit. And in saying that, we can't move that unit anywhere else because of the height of the doors. And that's where the height of the doors comes into a major play. This has been a health and safety issue for some time now. And I do truly feel this needs to be addressed shortly. Mold concerns. We did have some mold issues in our association room, which we did remove the bathroom insulation. We had a company come in and re-insulate and re-tile. That's not saying any other parts of that association hall do not have mold, because we did not persist into moving any more tiles unless it was done during one of our building assessments that we've gone through. Next slide, please. So major issues, lack of space. So I just wanted to talk a little bit of lack of space. Basically, the fire hall looks in great shape, and it probably is structurally, but to tell you the truth, we've outgrown the fire hall and outgrown it for different reasons. Reasons being our communities got bigger. We've added more material to our fleet, such as a UTV and a trailer. You know, with the growth that our community is looking to do, possibly subdivisions, I'm looking to replace a tanker, but also keep a tanker, for the simple fact with the growth, I believe, you know, in time, we're going to require 2 tankers. So this is all just lack of space and outgrowing a facility. Trucks are made bigger nowadays. I compare it to, you know, back in 1976, if you had a 60 amp service in your house, that was big for your house in 76. But when you look at 2001 and how changes have come about, you would be no less than 100 or 200 amp. Things get outgrown as the years go on. And I truly feel that's what's happened to us. We have had a couple incidents. Just recently, our furnace got backed into, and it was just an accident, and they happen in business. But again, having to back into a narrow bay, a dark hall, these things just happen. So, you know, just a bit of history. It's outgrown, and I still think it's a good building to a certain degree, but not for your fire station. Next slide, please. Fire doors, I believe Stephen has touched. We have the same doors as Stephen. So I had some repairs done recently. They tell me these doors have a 20-year life expectancy. We are 45 years with these doors. They've had their 20 years plus 25 more years where they've been outdated. They still work, don't get me wrong, very hard to get parts for. State of the art when they were put in. They heated your building, but they did not take into effect that the sun's not out 24 hours a day. So at nighttime, they also lose a lot of energy. Next slide, please. So future requirements. So everybody's got a wish list, and this is my wish list. So drive-through garage, 5 bays in width and 2 bays deep, new location. Combination fire hall, public works garage, share wash bay, drainage, heavy equipment, tools, washing, etc. Steve touched on the wash bays, which I think is the heart of the whole operation. We can't be draining stuff out onto our lawns and whatnot. We need proper wash bays and proper storage tanks for that facility. Future, you know, staff, I've been in that building looking for maybe a chief's office with potential for future staff. As we're aware, a fire department is not a one-man show, so we do need to have a second in command sooner or later. So it would be nice to have maybe I'm not saying a deputy chief's office, but maybe a station chief's office or something along that line. Association hall for the department would be a nice feature in that building with male and female bathrooms shared with the public works. So I do see a lot of advantage to, you know, public works and fire sharing a lot of stuff. That's the end of my my future goals and wishes. I'm looking forward to any questions later on. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, you guys. So just going through some other stuff, and some of it was touched on earlier, but let's go through it really quickly. Again, these are some pictures of our IT space. So the first one is actually sitting underneath our kitchen table, and the second one is our IT room, which is in essentially a closet. That's something sort of to consider. We need ventilation, protection of equipment. Probably the preference would be to have all of that equipment in one room. The other thing that's IT related, and we've talked about it a lot, is to bring fiber to the property, and whether it's to the existing 8-acre property or to the 22-acre property that the township owns, we need to start taking a look at having appropriate fiber, the cost of that, and also just to hitch onto that, probably to the Rosedale Hall as well. I know that's been a request from various people. Another really important topic to discuss is accessibility. So accessibility requirements have to be met under the Act by 2024. And in the building conditions assessment report we had done, they outlined various options for how we could deal with making the building handicap accessible, but it's something that we need to consider because it can lead to a variety of issues. Either if we, you know, if you do modifications inside, it can lead to reduced space. If you don't have a vestibule, the cold air will just come right into the building. Or you could do an addition, but they're all sort of factors we need to consider. But overall, the main message is we have to certainly give accessibility due consideration if we're going to do any renovation or new build. So the septic systems, there are two septic systems, one for the administration building fire hall. It is overburdened currently by the existing fixture count. So the number of basically taps, showers in the fire bay, sinks, dishwasher, that type of thing. There's really just a little bit more than what the system was designed for. So the septic system is assumed, we don't have records, assumed to be installed around 1978 and then upgraded in 1990. As far as I can tell, there are no septic records for the public works garage. But either way, they were installed in about 78, and the main fire hall one was upgraded in the 90s. The average septic system lasts ballpark 20 to 30 years. So we're definitely probably over the maximum life of that. So we should be considering a new septic system, whether it's a joined one septic system for all buildings or whether it's back to two separate ones or three, depending on how we move forward. That's something that needs to be looked at. The building condition assessment report also noted, that the majority of asphalt pavement needs to be completed by 2024. So our parking lot, concrete curbing, and curbing to support the pillars that lead into our entranceways need to be looked at. So that sort of is the end of what the concerns are. And we look towards solutions or non-solutions. The first one is to maintain status quo. That doesn't really serve for preparation for the future. It doesn't address health and safety concerns, and it's not particularly fiscally responsible, particularly with respect to leaving vehicles outside, as was talked about in the public works side of the presentation. We could look at renovating on the existing site. So I'm not going to go into big detail about what's written here, but I have listed, the things that would be either required or nice to have in each of those buildings. So you're looking at, when you look at those lists, they're at considerable expense to either add these things to the building or to remove things like mold or, potential for asbestos, for example, in the fire association hall. So there are costs associated with doing these things. And I think if anyone has had any experience with renovation like I have, you start out a project and you think it's going to be a certain cost, but as you start, opening up roofs or taking down walls or adding an addition for accessibility, there are other things that come out of the woodwork. And that can add the surprise costs that you were never aware of. So that's sort of my caution in terms of the renovation is the building assessment report we had was visual only. They didn't go and do any tests or any studies or dig into the walls or dig into the roof or do any of those things. So you may have this list of things you want to do or can do, but once you start getting into it, more surprises might jump out of you that you weren't necessarily aware might happen. And the other solution is reconstructing on the existing site. So it is an 8-acre site. There's a picture of it here. You can see that the site's been a little bit, to be honest, a little haphazardly constructed. So it would take considerable effort to consider, what to do first, where things should go. You need to consider constraints, for example, the location of the septic systems, where they would have to be moved, where they could be reconstructed, the location of the propane and gas tanks, access and egress onto the site. Do you renovate those buildings or do you build new and have a combined office that's all together or separate buildings? So I know in a previous meeting, there was a determination of joining the public works and fire on this site. And that's something that I certainly think when you look at the site, there is room for that. And then the question is what becomes of the administration building. So these are some of the solutions that the people who end up winning the RFP will be taking a look at and considering and providing best advice on. But those are some constraints to consider, but certainly the site is large enough, I believe, to do a development or renovation. The other caution I would throw out there is that 50 years down the road, if there is the growth that we're anticipating, that the site will be maxed out and we'll have to look for another property in another 50 years to do more on. You'll go through the process again. And then the other solution is, I've shown it on the map. I guess it's not particularly clear. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse. Can you see my mouse at all on the screen?
Excuse me, Joanna?
Yep.
I just have one question before you go on. I apologize for interrupting, but because it's that page that we just finished, is that just a typographical mistake, the last 3 words?
Oh, I guess that shouldn't say Rosedale. It's just a new hall. Sorry about that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah, there could be potential to have actually what it was is to keep the Rosedale Hall, but potential to have maybe another meeting hall as well. I apologize for that. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
And then so the 22 acres is on Rosedale Road and adjacent to the school. And so the other solution here is to potentially lease the existing municipal complex, lease or sell to an industrial business and collect the rent or the sale money and use it towards payment of a new complex on the 22 acres. My estimation, and again, I'm not a professional in design, so I I don't really want to say anything a lot more, but I don't see that it would take up any more than 5 to 7 acres of the 22 acres, leaving room for things such as, bar in the future, perhaps a recreation complex, parking, trail systems, community gardens, play structures, that type of thing. So I think, there's certainly, it's a large enough lot and a big enough space that you could house, your administration building, your combined fire and public works, recreation space, and potentially, again, as mentioned, sort of another, a community hall that could also be used as maybe for emergency purposes or emergency scenarios. So those are sort of the general options that I could see to bring forward, and options that will be looked at by the person successful in getting this design build RFP, and they may come up with more, but these are the sort of most basic solutions that staff looked at and considered. And I will turn it over to our treasurer to finish up with the finance side of things.
Good evening.
And
So from the treasury side of things this evening, this evening we're basically updating from a meeting from 2020 in regards to this subject. With COVID and the speed things moved during COVID and being safe, we're still working through this process. So I just wanted to say from this evening, I see us heading towards our 2022 budget discussions in the fall. And as we look at this, it will indicate to us what we may want to put in our reserve allocations for the following year. And I also, today I looked at the township strategic plan, which on page 25 on the chart, there's a 4.2 and a 4.3, which were municipal facilities. And this is being identified by the township in this strategic plan to build reserves for repair, renovation, or replacement of the township administrative building and the public works garage, and to look at the land adjacent to the school and the development of reserve funds for potential development. So it's nice to see that we can address those issues as we go. I just wanted to let council know that in regards to our building condition assessment, which we did in 2020, we've been looking at replacement costs compared to what was in that report, and we noticed that those costs are rising quickly. We've been talking to neighboring townships and monitoring that to see how that's going to affect us in our budgeting process. Another note is we're doing a development charges study this year that will come into effect for 2022. There have been some changes to the Development Charges Acts in Ontario, and those changes should be beneficial to the township in the rates of development charges that we collect on new building and construction. That will help contribute towards the growth in the township, which includes the things that we're looking at here tonight. So and the development charges study is something that will be its own agenda item in the near future, and we'll have a lot more detail on that. So just quickly, what I see this evening is this is our step one, is updating council with this information and where we're at. Step two is going to be the feasibility study that we're currently going to be undertaking throughout the summer of 2021 and the fall of 2021, which is great because that's going to answer a lot of the questions we'll have. And that will take us into our 2022 budget planning in the fall. And while we're doing that, the roof for the administrative building is an ongoing thing that we'll be working on as well. And I see that taking us into, in 2022, probably working towards shovel-ready plans for what we're discussing this evening. and looking forward to the point where we have something substantial that we can go out and look for current applicable grants and loans and good rates that we can use to fund this, because we're not there yet. And that is good because we'll be able to, with those things, manage our tax rates, not put too much pressure on our tax rates, while our services grow to keep up with the growth of the township. So I would say at this point, we're getting everything in order, and wanted to make sure council was up to date on how things were progressing.
All right, so I think that's the summary of the presentation. So let you guys ask questions or discuss.
So I think, Joanna, thank you to all four of you for giving the reports so far tonight. I think it would be good for us to do one report at a time rather than jumping all over the place. So if that's all right with council, then I think we could start off with yours, Joanna, and we'll put you on the hot seat first, and then we'll go on. But I think that's probably the easiest thing, rather than jumping from one report to the next. So I'm going to open it up to council then, and for any questions and comments. Claus?
Well, first off, I want to compliment Joanna for the in-depth report. It covered a lot of good territory. And I guess I'm going to make a personal statement. I did not realize that our municipal complex that we've been doing business out of since I've been on council was in that bad a shape, especially the fact that the furnace is sitting inside the vault, which is the most precious records of all, and the furnace being a very dangerous piece of explosive equipment that could crap out anytime. Sorry. I mean, I know the furnace is maybe not that old, but for a furnace to be stored, and I'm questioning even if it's legal that furnace is even stored in there from an inspection point of view, from our supplier of propane, I presume, correct? So I'm kind of shocked, but compliments to Joanna for that. And we have, to me, a very serious situation with our municipal complex. The windows, ventilation, the space, the accessibility. 2025, we're to have the building completely accessible for wheelchair, handicap, and so forth. And I know it's not, and that has been indicated many times. So I certainly have an opinion as to what should be done with the building, but I'll reserve that comment till we hear from the rest and see where we go. So I'll just comment on Joanna's report for now, and then let the rest have a chance. Thank you, Reeve.
Okay, so let's see, I don't see any other questions on this report, but okay, no, now Jeff, I do. So Jeff and Karen.
Yeah, I mean, not to say what Claus is saying, but yeah, for sure. I mean, staff did a great job putting all this together. I mean, knowing that the buildings are obviously obviously in need of a change or either repair or rebuild, and I think it was well done to make sure that the public is well aware of the actual problems with that's out there. That we're looking at something that needs to be done. It's not like it's a wish list of because we want to just have new buildings, but because of the condition they're in. So kudos to that, to make sure that we understand the actual conditions. I really think tonight though, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, I think this is fantastic. I think this is what we need to move forward. I don't think getting into a discussion of where we think should go and our comments on the different ideas, we've had those discussions already in the past, and I don't really want to rehash them. And albeit I don't mind staying up till 11 o'clock at night. I don't think everybody here would. So I think my opinion is we don't really want to get into a massive discussion about this. I think this is the first step for us to get forward to the next step, so we can have those conversations with I'm going to say with the true experts out there that know what we're actually looking at, because I think we can debate all we want back and forth about where the building should be and everything else. I think we've already had that debate. So I'm more open, and I'm hoping we're going to move to this is a great report, and let's get to the next step. So because that's going to be the deeper conversations too as well. So that's sort of my 2 cents, and I'll move on to the next 2 cents. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. And I think you kind of hit one nail on the head there when you mentioned about experts, because, what do we know regarding some of the issues that were already brought up? So yeah, the next steps is to be listening to the experts as far as I'm concerned. Thank you for that. Karen, on to you.
So exactly. I mean, we had a meeting June 23rd. We went through the building assessment report, and it outlined a lot of these items that are here. The June 23rd set out saying that council directs staff to proceed with option 1 for the fire, public works, and administration buildings. That's what was carried, not the defeated one that Joanna had originally read. From there, we moved on to the design RFP, where we followed the approval of that council provide direction on the proposed design build requirements or submission requirements, and that council authorized staff to apply to the FCM Green Municipal Fund for the design build program. And then we went on to the roof replacement, and that council directed staff with option 1, that was to move forward with a joint engineering construction tender for the peaked roof replacement, including a tin surface. The discussion at that time was that we were doing the whole building, including the fire department, with the tin, and that was to be gone. So we moved forward through all of it, and it's almost a year later, and we are no further ahead. We are waiting for the experts to give us all the information. We're still waiting on that peaked roof. Now we've got this one out there. And I mean, at that time, yes, it was very clear. We said none of us wanted to build on the 22 acres. We had plenty of space where we were at. There were fixes that could be done, and that's how we were moving forward. And I'm a little disappointed that it's a year later and we're still really no farther ahead. That's my 5 cents worth.
Yeah, no, thank you, Karen. And I'll only speak for myself that, so yeah, 1 year has gone by, but in some ways, maybe it's a good thing that 1 year has gone by. So we've given it a little bit more thought, and then now we've seen this further in-depth report. So I do see it helping the situation a little bit better, but I'm hoping that we all feel the same way, that it's time now. 2 of us have already, 3 of us have used the word experts. Like, to me, it's now time to move on and to the next step, and that doesn't include any further discussion about the more minor things, like where things are going to go. So yeah, it's pretty important that we move on to the next step as far as I'm concerned. So I think I'll go to Ian, and back to you, Karen. Ian?
He's on mute.
You're on mute, Ian.
You're on mute, Ian.
My apologies.
No problem.
Again, I'd like to thank the staff for all the work that they put into the report. I know everybody's looked at it and put a lot of effort and time and everything into it. I guess my question is Joanna, what do you need from us tonight? Do you need something from us to go ahead? I know you have RFPs out there, or you have tenders out there. Is there anything that you need from council tonight to proceed for those tenders?
I don't think so. I mean, this was more of an information only to get the process started with respect to sort of the public awareness, public consultation side of things. When we do receive those RFPs, they should come in on the 10th. It'll be brought to you to make the final decision of who we're going to choose to do that. At that stage, I believe they probably are going to be addressing, I'm imagining, they will be addressing some of those major health and safety issues, because they're going to want to find out the current conditions of the existing buildings. And for me, it's, more than anything else, it's a health and safety of staff that are most concerning. And I'm hoping that, they will have those addressed in that process, and we can, move towards that. But as of right now, as much as I think we're all chomping at the bit to make a decision, and as much as I've written this report, I'm not the expert. And, I think we do have to go through this process with the professionals, with the experts who do this on a day-to-day basis. So we can take the next step in moving forward with getting additional funding. So, this is for information, and this is, from your staff, so that you're all, I think, a little bit aware of, it's certainly what's happened in the last 6 months since I've been here. And I know Jasmine has brought you up to date in the June meeting last year, but just maybe being a little bit more blunt about it, I guess, so that you guys are all on the same page as us. But I don't think we need any action from you guys at this time, aside from just, having heard everything.
Follow up, Ian?
Yeah, please. Thank you very much, Joanna. I guess, I kind of, I guess one of my concerns is, are there any immediate health and safety, these are all immediate health and safety concerns, but I mean, like, health and safety concerns for persons' welfare, where somebody could get injured, significantly or something like that, it's one thing to sit here and talk about it, but once you bring it to someone's attention, there's a legal responsibility to act. And I want to make sure that if there is something of that serious nature, it is brought to our attention so we have an ability to do so. That's one of my concerns. I really want this process to move along and to make sure that we, come up with the right solution. It's going to be a long-term solution, and I look forward to see what everybody says. I hope the speed of what happens maybe increases a little bit, and it's a little bit regrettable that the buildings have gotten to this level.
So,
if I may.
Thank you, Ian, for that. And I think that we all have to agree that about your concern. But as far as I'm concerned, we've already listened to the 3 reports. And if you listen to it and you read into it, then you can see that there's several things that are of health and safety issue, and there's several things that are immediate. And immediate, we know that immediate can't all happen in the next week or month, but certainly, as everybody's saying so far, it's time to move to go to the next step. So I'm going to go back to you, Karen.
So to follow up on Ian's health and safety, so we know things happen, and as things happen, we do incident reports. We document what caused it and how we can then prevent it again. So as much as some of this stuff is of urgent, we need to know what process can we change to remove that hazard so that we can still be able to work safely. And I hope that is being addressed for some of the incidents that have been mentioned, because we do need to move forward in getting our buildings larger to accommodate the vehicles, et cetera. But at the same time, until we can get to that stage, to ensure the health and safety, we have to put some sort of a process in place on how to address it.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I mean, I learned at the first meeting back on June 23rd of some of these health and safety concerns that I had never been informed of. And yet 20 years later, some of these concerns are still there. That's the part that it's like we have to do to address how to make it so that it works.
Yeah, I'm going to go to you, Claus, in a minute, but I'll go back to Joanna first, and then to you, Claus, if that's okay. So Joanna, please.
Yeah, so just in response to Karen, I know the last committee meeting I brought forward that we're starting to look at some of those health and safety items, and so we have done some investigations, and I think that it's certainly something we can do better on, and we are working on that, and we'll continue to do that. So I appreciate the heads up, and we do have to do better in that respect. So we'll work towards that. Thank you, Karen. Sorry, Councillor Jennings.
Okay, Claus, please.
Thanks, Ray. I'd like to make a comment in regards to Andrew's report and just a compliment on his research that he's done on it. And I have all the faith in Andrew and the staff to look into government funding. I mean, that is going to be the key to this whole thing. And I mean, they're out there. Funds are out there, especially green energy funds and so forth. You hear about it so often. So I appreciate what Andrew has put in his report of going to research out there to find the funding. My second comment, if I may, Rafe, is towards Miles Greer. I mean, that is an area that his men work in on a regular basis that is of utmost concern of health and safety. The space they have to work in to try and cram all those vehicles in there and try and work in between the vehicles and walk in between the vehicle and the front door is very, very unsafe. So that is one area that we have to pay very close attention to from a health and safety point of view. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So as everybody knows that we were going to kind of start off asking questions, making comments regarding the first report, but we're kind of wavering all over the place. So, but that's okay. Don't worry. We're going to get to you next, Steve, and then to Miles. But before we do that, I'm going to go to you, Ian, please.
Yeah, I guess just a follow-up, I guess, on the health and safety stuff. I'm going to ask council that we consider having Joanna make a list of what those health and safety issues are, and make sure that we have so we kind of track them and make sure that there's a process in place to minimize them. So if we can make a list of those, but what the process is that we're going to put in place to minimize them, and then bring that back, because at the end of the day, there's a whole legal thing here. And as council, we are legally responsible. So I want to make sure that personally, not just the municipality, but personally. And I want to make sure that we have a plan in place to go ahead and address those issues while we wait and while we travel down this path.
So thank you, Ian, for that. So, the problem is, and I agree with you, and maybe it's a matter of kind of prioritizing a little bit, but in actual fact, one of the biggest issues, as we know, is the size of the building, the size of the doors, and the size of our trucks, whether it be fire trucks or public works. So, like, there's only one thing that we can do to address that issue, which is probably one of the most important issues and one of the most expensive issues. And there's only one way to go. It means bigger buildings and bigger doors because we've got bigger equipment. So it's pretty simple. Some of the things I don't want to say they're less important, but they are certainly, Ian, I agree with you that there's certain things that we might be able to address very, very soon in a temporary, sort of almost temporary basis. But certainly some of the biggest issues we have to move on, and then those issues will be addressed in whatever new building, or replaced or renovated or retrofitted building we put up. So they'll be addressed then, but some of them can't be addressed until we put up a new building. So I'm going to go to Joanna, please.
Just in response to Ian, I am planning on having a health and safety report, just exactly what you're talking about for the June 15th meeting. I'm hoping to sort of outline some of the major things and suggestions for moving forward on them. We may not, as Bill sort of alluded to, address them. We can't address them all. A lot of them are space needs, but things such as mold and water, I think, can be addressed through at least starting the process of testing those things. So that's sort of direction I will be looking for in the near future.
Thanks, Joanna.
Thanks, Joanna. So I'm going to flip it back over to now Steve for a minute. Were there any questions specifically for Steve? Okay, seeing none. What about, are there any questions specifically for Miles? Okay, then seeing none. And Andrew, anything else there? Okay, then it seems to me that we've listened to everybody's reports, and I'm going to just read the motion that we have here, and then if not, if we want, we can go ahead and work or vote on this. But I also will, in the end, we'll go to the public to see if we have any questions. But this motion here reads, it was moved by Klaus Vandermeer and seconded by Karen Jennings, that council received this report as information and as an update to the previous report of June the 23rd, 2020. So do we have any comments or questions before we vote on that? Okay, so I do see Joanna and Claus. So Joanna, before we vote on this.
Sorry, this is questions from the public. That's what you're
No,
looking
no,
for?
not yet.
Sorry.
I guess we can pass this motion. We're receiving this for information. We can pass this motion first and then go to the public questions, can't we? Okay, so, okay, first and then I'll go to you, Claus.
Thanks, Reed. On this report now, we received this as information. Refresh my memory. What's our next step now then? Joanna?
The next step is
Maybe, sorry, Joanna, I think, I guess we should really vote on this and then we can go to the next step, Claus.
Okay, whatever. Thank you.
I've just put the motion on the floor here, so if that's okay, if we can vote on this first and then we can go to the next steps. So all in favor of this? So this is unanimously endorsed here. And Claus, then I will go to you. And your question was, you just want a refresh of the next step?
Yeah.
And we'll go to Joanna for that.
So essentially, the next step in this process is you receive this for information. This is the beginning of the public pre-consultation process. And we're going to wait for an RFP, we're going to wait to select a person from the RFP to be able to do the design feasibility study. And then they'll work through the process in terms of looking at accessibility, energy efficiency, current conditions of the buildings. They go through all that process, speak with staff, do their own assessments. Some of the studies I've mentioned, maybe looking at water quality and potential for mold and that type of thing. And eventually they'll come up with a recommendation somewhere around November to bring to council, to make their recommendation as professionals, at which point hopefully you'll have all the information in front of you to make a viable decision for the direction you want to move in.
If we move forward like that, then Joanna, I guess one question that I have here is, would they look into doing this extra testing for the water for any other contaminants and salt and so on? Because it still is, it's a question that we would have to have answered, whether we're going, whichever option we decide, whether it be at the 22 acres or where we are, we still need to know about the water. So is that something that we could go ahead and do now, or would we wait till the new people are involved?
It's a good question. I'm going to have to sort of take a look at what comes through, what their suggestions are. It's a request for proposal, so I don't know what everybody is going to individually sort of propose, but one of the main items in the RFP we put out was to look at health and safety considerations. So I would assume, but can't confirm, that they would be looking at the current conditions and health and safety concerns to address those. But certainly, if they are not planning on doing that, I would highly suggest that we do that on our own, as Ian said, to address those health and safety issues in a timely fashion.
Yeah, I would be agreeing to that for sure. Okay, so could I get Jeff?
Yeah, I guess I just want to make sure I get it all through this, my thought process too as well. So obviously we approve this, but the request for the proposal really at the end of the day is for that company to come in and then we work with that company, right? I'm assuming we're going to have numerous meetings involved with those consultants, and the timeline is that it needs to be done by the end. Only that portion has to be done by the end of the year in order to get the grant. Is that correct? Or does it just have to be, like, if we're not done and we're still in the process, and say it bleeds into January or something like that, will that make us null and void for that grant side of things? Or does it have to be absolutely completed by the end of the year?
The timeline laid out for us is November. I can't speak to whether or not FCM would have additional flexibility. I haven't had, to be honest, a lot of experience with grants. I might direct that question to our treasurer.
So I don't have that contract in front of me, but we basically signed that contract to agree to finish up and have it presented to council for November. But if everything works out, I think that should be a pretty realistic timeline. And that's what I would want to see anyways, because that will allow us to use that in our next budget for next year. So if we stay on top of it, then we should be able to have it done at least before that and ready to bring to council for November.
And a quick,
I can
Go ahead,
double
Jeff.
check the contract. I can double check the contract and verify that though. And see what the fine print says about timelines and deadlines. And get back to
Yeah.
council.
yeah.
Follow up, Jeff?
Yeah, two things. I mean, and I think that's exactly it. If there's a way to make just a C for an extension or or anything about that, I would be curious of that, Andrew, if you don't mind. Just, I mean, obviously this is going to be a very discussed point, and I'm sure the public's going to have a lot of opinion too as well. So, I mean, just in case there is some dragging out. I just want to see if there's, we want to have those options. And the other one too as well, if there's a hard and firm date, and that's also good too as well, because it gives us a stop date. But also not to reiterate, but to kind of to go along with Reeve Dobson, a water test would be something that'd be, I think, pretty critical, because that could completely change the whole conversation. Obviously, if the water is no chance of being good, I'd like to think if you go deeper and all that kind of stuff, you're able to find better water. But that would be a very good, one of those ones I'd want to know earlier than later, because I don't want to be discussing this in October and then we go, oh wait, by the way, now we just realize our water actually is no good here. So I think we might want to work on that sooner rather than later. So that's it for me. Let's go. Thanks.
Klaus?
Yeah, thanks. Based on some of the comments, there'll be several meetings and so forth, and I guess maybe some of us won't like this, but I'm wondering, we do take a break in the summertime. If there's something that was important that Joanna comes back from the consultants that we should know about, could we possibly call emergency meetings during the summertime so we can move this forward and be done by November? I know we're supposed to take a summer break, but this summer we can't go anywhere anyway. And I'm suggesting that if we need necessary, if Joanna and the Reeve feel this is important, we should be calling some meetings during the summertime to get this moving.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Klaus. And I guess the fact of the matter is that the Habs won't be playing then, so we'll be okay.
They'll be playing golf.
Ian will have to put that sweater away.
Yeah.
So anyways, Joanna, if you or Christy could open it up and see if there's any questions from the public, please.
Yeah, I have a couple, and they're lengthy. So I'm going to be honest. We started off this conversation at council asking for some respectful comments. So I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit, just because I don't want to get into anything that might be deemed to not be entirely appropriate. So to paraphrase these questions, this has all been discussed extensively before, and I'm wondering, what is the rush now? Timelines have been established to eventually build us an up-to-date municipal complex. That's the first part of the question.
I'm not sure whether anybody wants to try to answer that, but as far as I'm concerned, the question's been answered throughout the
What was the end of
reports.
the question? Sorry.
Sorry?
What was the end of the question? I missed the end of the question. Sorry.
Yeah, what-
The timelines have been established eventually to build us up an up-to-date municipal complex. So what's the rush?
Okay. Oh, okay.
So I guess if somebody else wants to help answer this, but as far as I'm concerned, there's been many issues already pointed out to do with health and safety issues and other issues. And so to me, I'm not sure how we can answer that question any more than what's been done in the reports already, because it's pretty evident. And I think everybody on council has pretty well said that we must move on. So, the reports are telling us to move on, or that we're saying we should move on. It's pointed out why we should move on sooner than later. So it's pretty hard to answer that question, but if anybody else wants to attempt it, go ahead, please. Claus?
I come back to our treasurer's report, okay, about getting government grants. There's a lot of provincial and federal governments seem to be throwing out there because of COVID and health and safety issues and so forth. And while these grants are available out there, we should be capitalized on them. If we sit and wait, there could be a change coming down the tube at some point in time. So I think the reason that the urgency right now is to get in on the green energy grants and all those grants that are floating around out there.
Okay, what's the next question, Joanna, please?
When it comes to public works, the main doors are coated with salt. Perhaps staff should be cleaning the doors. Does the township not have a pressure washer? If you need shelving, buy it and clean up the area. There's no need for the mess. And if trucks are stored outside, it's not a catastrophe. Lots of vehicles and machinery are stored outside.
Anybody have a question for an answer for that? Okay, are there, does anybody want to attempt to answer that? I mean, we all know that vehicles stay outside. Many vehicles stay outside, but it's just common sense that if they're your own vehicle, and you're right, if you want to leave your vehicle outside, that's fine, but we're dealing with taxpayers' vehicles, and we all know, and it's been said many times, and it's just common sense, if they're out of the elements, they're going to last longer, and they're deteriorating because we don't have the space. And as far as, I guess my answer also, I guess one answer would be that it should be, we should maybe go and buy another shelf, but we need some space to put the shelf in the first place. So at least when you put some things on the floor in front of the shelf, well, you can move them. But if you're gonna have a shelf, there's no other space. We're out of space. It's pretty obvious. But anyways, I don't want to make light of the question because they're good questions. That we've had the same questions. So Jeff, please.
Yeah, I mean, not to reiterate what you're saying, Reed Dobson, because I don't want to leave you there to dry to only answer all the questions for us. But I mean, I think that's it's tough, and this is not easy. And I mean, and it's also been tricky. I mean, Councillor Jennings made a great point before. It's like, like this has been talked about for a long time, and now, I think it's great that we're getting on the horse to take that next step. And it is a big next step to do anything like this, because there's obviously is that thought of, well, what's this going to cost and how much it's going to cost. But I mean, I think the biggest thing is we're looking at not doing any more of those little fixes. We're looking at the investment of what that's going to be for the next 50 years, like Joanna has brought that up. And I think that's a very key point to the public, is that we're not looking to build something new because we want to. Yes, it'd be great to do some more maintenance and some maintaining. We've lived out these buildings. This is something that I think, like exactly what Reed Dobson just said, we've had this huge discussion over and over and over again. And also, I think past councils have too as well, trying to make sure we're not doing something that is not needed. But we're obviously at a point where we are now. So I think, yeah, I mean, if we could just buy more shelves and do that, I don't think there's a council member sitting here that wouldn't say, let's save that money and not do that. But I mean, I think you're getting a consensus of this council that we have been looking at this and talking about this and seeing this. And I think the past councillors too as well have been talking about it too as well for even longer than I'll use Councillor Jennings and myself, because we're the two rookies right here right now. But I mean, it's something that has to be now addressed. And I think I'm happy that we're doing that, and we're moving forward with that. So, and I appreciate the questions, because I think this is exactly the stuff that we've discussed too as well. But these, and I'm looking forward to these discussions as we get deeper into this process too as well, with the public too as well. Because we're here just like the taxpayers, just like the public is, and we want to make sure that we're making those decisions right. So I mean, obviously, like, throw the questions at us, because I mean, like, and I love the contentious questions. I love the questions that make us think and that cause a debate. That's fantastic. But I mean, bear in mind that we have discussed this a lot, and we're trying to move in a direction that's going to be the best setup for our township in the long future. And I mean, I use that example too as well as if we talk about the next 50 years, I'm 40 years old, 42 years old, and my theory is I'm not even halfway through my life yet. So I'm going to see this next 50 years, and I plan on being here for it. So I mean, I'm excited as we go through this process too as well. So but thanks for the questions. These are great questions.
Are there any other further questions, Joanna?
Yeah, there's further questions.
Okay.
The next one, fire department. We all know that we need a new bay to hold our new fire truck. There are some trucks that can be kept outside for now until such time as the township has money to build larger. I think staff are forgetting that we have less than 2,000 taxpayers in the township. This is not Beckwith or in fact any other township in Lanark. It will take time to update and increase our municipal buildings since we are starting at zero because of the lack of maintenance in past years.
Jeff?
Another awesome, great question, and I love it. And I think that you're keying a lot of really good points too as well. I think we have to look at also, like, we have a growth strategy. We know we're going to grow, and I mean, yeah, we're not going to compare ourselves always to other townships, but we're going to obviously have best practices and learn from them too as well. And I really think I agree about, we have. I guess you're saying, like, about our 1,600 homes, we have almost 4,000 people in our township, and we're going to see growth. And I think Treasurer Andrew Hodge really hit up the key point of the development charges. And if we see that growth plan, development charges are a big part of that payment back, with the grant funding that we can get to as well. So I mean, I don't think, and I'll speak on my perspective, and if anybody for sure agree, we realize this, the size of our township, but we're not going to stay this size. And if we think that we're going to stay this size for the next 20 years, then that's not an affordable option for us either. So I think that we have to look at a strategic plan that's actually going to make us more affordable. And these plans are going to do that. And also, I mean, we have an immediate need, and I know Chief Greer's put his hands up, we have to figure out where we're going to put these bigger vehicles, and everything is getting bigger. So I think, once again, great question. But I don't think, but I mean, as small as we are, but the potential for us to get some of those grants and to grow is there. And once again, I speak on my own side, but also the other councillors here. We are very cognizant of of what it's going to cost and the price, and that's going to be one of the things that we're going to work really hard on to make sure that we're getting the best bang for the buck here. But another great question though.
So I've got two more hands up, but I'd like to just kind of try to keep if you're going to try to answer the question, try to keep it as simple as possible, because we can't get into a great big long discussion about each question, because then we're starting to have another meeting. So we have to just try to remember what the question is and what the question period is for. So please, first is Miles, and then to Claus.
So I certainly have to totally disagree with keeping any fire apparatus out in the elements. Time is of the issue on any fire call. And if there's 3 feet of snow on it, where does time come into play? The question to me is not even feasible to be looking at keeping a fire apparatus out in any elements. Thank you.
Claus, thank you, Miles. Claus, please.
Miles
Again,
stole
if you
my
have the
answer.
answer to the question.
Yeah, Miles stole my answer. And I think we're progressing as a township and we need to protect our equipment that our taxpayers are paying for, especially new people coming in. They want to see that we're being progressive and looking after their investment, which is our fire equipment. Storage outside to me is out of the question. Sorry.
Next question, Joanna, please.
Since this was a done deal and it was decided to renovate, improve what we had on the existing municipal township land, why is this being discussed as a new possible new build on the 22 acres beside the public school land?
Awesome.
Anybody want to try that question?
I mean, I'll-
Claus?
Thanks. Thanks. Okay. Thanks, Jeff. I don't think this is a done deal. I don't think anyone of us has really come up with a decision whether we're going to renovate what we've got or rebuild what we got or go to the 22 acres. We're in the process of getting a study done. And this is the starting point of it.
Okay, Joanna and Karen. Joanna, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear. There was a decision made June 23rd to choose option 1. So that decision was made by council. And as I showed at the very beginning slides on March 2nd, I believe, staff then additionally had direction from council to sort of draft this report and bring it forward. So I can't speak to what's happened in the interim, but I mean, we did have some new information to bring forward with respect to some different items that were discovered, since at least since I've been around. But that's basically how I can answer that. I don't know if that's a fulsome answer or the correct answer, but that's what I can say for my piece.
Yeah, well, with that new information, that's where we are today.
So, Karen, did you have something to answer to that?
Well, my comment was just going to be that it was in the staff's report that addressed the 22 acres, which was different from our June 23rd discussion. And again, it still comes back to what the results of the RFP bring us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
I guess I can also just kind of remind everybody also, the reason that we have committee of the whole meetings and then we have 2 weeks later, like the council meeting, is and from one meeting to the next, it's very good that we do have a situation where we have like a second sober thought. It gives you 2 weeks to possibly change your mind. And this, we're talking about the biggest issue that a council has ever had to deal with in Montague Township, I believe. It's probably the biggest issue. So the fact that some of us might change your mind from one part of the year to the next, I think is probably very good. And that we're not stuck in one place. So I don't think nothing is a done deal yet. Joanna, next.
Yeah, just I think more of a comment. It was who would put a furnace in a safe?
Yeah. Well,
I'm not sure.
We're probably
can't.
all asking the same question. So I think every one of us could answer by saying that is one of the best questions tonight, but I'm afraid that none of us are even going to attempt to try to answer that comment. So maybe you could go on to the next one, Joanna. And I don't want to laugh about it. Matter of fact, I will make my own comment about that. As far as I'm concerned, sooner than later, we better get any historical documents out of there. And if we have to, we'll have to buy or rent a place someplace to put them or something. But I think sooner than later, we better get the historical documents and whatever cannot be reproduced out of there. So that's my only comment about that. But Joanna, please. Sorry.
So I guess just for a bit of fun, the furnace is also sideways from where it would normally sit. But it is like tagged appropriately and signed off. So somebody did believe that it met the code. So I'm going to have to assume that it does. It's just in an unusual location.
Well, maybe they got the word safe kind of mixed up. Like maybe they thought it was safe, but they didn't realize it was in a safe.
I want
Whoa.
to thank the person for that comment.
Are you thanking me for that comment?
No, whoever sent it in, because that's the first thing I said.
I agree. Well, it's a good comment for sure.
Sorry,
Joanna?
I had another question.
Yeah.
Will the water test be the same as the water test for residents on water from Smiths Falls?
Huh?
No.
I couldn't speak to that right now. Maybe
We
Miles
have
can.
Miles
Miles
answer
is,
here.
yeah.
Miles?
Yeah, I can comment on that. We've sent lots of water samples into Caduceus to have higher levels of lead and what tested. So that's certainly an option that we can do. And I can personally do that myself. I do have the proper classifications to complete that. So yeah, that's not an issue whatsoever.
Thank you. Next, Joanna?
Think that might be it. I'm just going to give it because that one sort of appeared just right out of the blue. Christy, do you have any at all while I check? I have none.
I have no more
Good.
questions.
Okay, I'm going to go to Jeff and then to Ian. Jeff, please.
Yeah, real quick for Chief Greer, how quickly could you do one of those more in-depth, like the what you can do, those tests? I'm just curious if we can see a little bit, just more of a little of a peek in the window of maybe on a next council meeting or something like that, sort of like what that looks like, or is that, how long does that take to do?
Actually, I do water samples every Wednesday that I send in to Kingston Caduceus. I wouldn't be able to do it this Wednesday, but next Wednesday I could complete it, which they have a turnaround of 3 days to get back to me. So absolutely, Jeff, that wouldn't be a problem.
Can you, we don't need to give, is that just like a staff direction thing, or is that like, do we have to give something for that? How does that?
There's going to be a minimal cost to have.
Additional cost.
Yes, correct, Karen, additional cost.
Are we good for that as council? Do we have a Reeve?
Yeah. Do we, Joanne, I'll ask you, do we need to give staff direction for that, or can that, I mean, we do have Miles in charge of water samples. I would think that he should be able to go ahead and do that on his own if he wants.
Yeah, the only thing I might think is if there were to be in the long run some sort of liability issues, it might be good to have a direction from council to show that you gave direction to do that.
Do you want that in the form of a motion, or do you want just staff direction consensus?
Either works, but consensus.
Okay, I'm going to go around the table then, or around the screen here, and get the consensus. I know that you had a question also, Ian, so maybe I'll take your question first in case it has something to do with this. So Ian, I'll go to you next.
Just process wise, the meeting, you read the motion to end the meeting. Is that correct?
What was that? I'm sorry?
When you passed the last motion, then the meeting, we're at the question stage. Is that correct?
Yes.
So then in theory, the meeting is over.
Oh, yeah.
You can give direction to any staff at this time.
Yeah,
Thanks, Ian.
the meeting in theory is not over until we adjourn it. We haven't adjourned it yet.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. We can still give staff direction. The meeting's not over. We haven't adjourned it. So we haven't passed that motion yet to adjourn it.
Oh, that's what I just want to make sure we're good.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think we can give staff direction by consensus here. And I'm going to go around the screen, and you're on your first clause.
Yes.
And Ian?
Yeah.
Jeff? And Karen?
No,
Okay, you've got consensus there, Miles, to go ahead, please.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Ian, please.
One last follow-up. I just want to take a second to thank everyone for bringing in their questions that they put in. And I know this is somewhat of a contentious issue and everything like that, but I want everybody to remember that this is a very open-minded, forward-thinking council that's looking out to the future. We've taken significant action, working on the official plans, strategic plans, roads needs study. We're putting all the pieces in place to make sure that we are successful. And when we go to do this, yes, right now we are not Beckwith, I agree, and we're not Carlton Place or Almont or Mississippi Mills or anything else like that. But we want to make sure that we do our job and we put the building blocks where they need to be, so that 15 years from now, when there is significant build and everything else that's going on, we're set up to manage it, operate, and run a very successful and efficient, sustainable township. And I think that's a key piece of what it is that we're doing right now. And I know this is for some this is a tough, but right track. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other hands in the air then. So again, I will thank all our staff for all the good reports. You certainly helped us a lot to move this forward, and thank you to our council, and again to the questions. Like, I'll just reiterate it. The public's questions have been our questions for a long time. And we're certainly working through it. And I know that sometimes it takes longer than what we think it should to get things done. But at least in the end, if we do things right, and we've only got one thing in mind, and that's to do it right for the taxpayers. And I'm pretty sure that our council, every one of us, has that in mind. So appreciate all the comments and the questions from the public for sure. So I'm going to then adjourn the meeting by having this motion, and it was moved by Klaus Vandermeer and seconded by Ian Straight, that the special meeting of the whole meeting do now adjourn at 7:47 p.m. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you, everybody. And good luck to the Habs.
Go Habs.